Elizabeth Brown. The tale of the last woman ever to be hanged in Dorset, England, is a sorry one, for Elizabeth Brown's was a true crime of passion, committed in a moment of heartbroken anger. It is also a tale that has left a lasting mark. Her death was watched by a 16-year-old reporter named Thomas Hardy, who would go on to be one of Britain's greatest novelists. Elizabeth's tragic story made such an impression on him that it formed the basis of his greatest novel, Tess of the D'Urbervilles, 1891. An attractive redhead, Elizabeth Martha Brown married her husband, John Anthony, later in life than was usual in the mid-19th century. He was 20 years her junior, and it was rumoured that he wed only for his wife's money, though the gossip doesn't have the ring of truth to it. Elizabeth was certainly not wealthy. Both she and her husband were employed as servants. The couple settled down to married life in the village of Birdsmoor near Beaminster in Dorset, and it soon became obvious that the relationship was not a happy one. Elizabeth became convinced that her youthful husband was unfaithful, and one fateful day she was proved right. Returning home unexpectedly on the night of July the 5th, 1856, Elizabeth caught her husband beneath the blankets of their married bed with another woman. Broken-hearted and humiliated, she flew into a terrible rage, and a violent quarrel followed. Elizabeth hit out at John, who in turn lashed her with a whip. She seized an axe, and in the heat of the moment caught him a fatal blow. Elizabeth then made a mistake that would eventually lead to her own death. Had she told the truth, then it is very likely that the circumstances of her husband's death would have been taken into account, and she would have been treated leniently. Instead, the frightened woman told police that her husband's fractured skull had been caused by the kick of a horse. Her story was not believed, and she was charged with murder and went on trial at Dorchester Assizes, where she continued to protest her innocence. It did not take a jury long to return a guilty verdict, and she was sentenced to death by hanging. Only then did she tell what had really happened. Although there was a swell of public support for Elizabeth, the Home Secretary refused to grant a reprieve because Elizabeth had lied for so long. She was taken to the scaffold at Dorchester Prison on August 9th, 1856, and, in a further cruel injustice, delivered into the hands of the infamous hangman William Calcraft, Britain's principal executioner from 1829 to 1874. He was noted for his short drops, which meant a slow and agonizing death by strangulation rather than a cleanly broken neck. A crowd of nearly 4,000 people gathered to watch Elizabeth accept her fate with calming dignity. She had chosen a tight-fitting black silk dress for her execution. The noose was ill-fitting, and Elizabeth's death was far from instant. A later report noted what a fine figure she showed against the sky as she hung in the misty rain. And how the tight black silk gown set off her shape as she wheeled half round and back in her death throes. This grisly and salacious report was written by the young Thomas Hardy.